morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Monday, October 26th. I'm Gary Stevens. Thanks to Peg McNichol subbing for me on Friday. In a few moments, we will be having a guest join us. Patty Vandenberg will be with us in about an hour with What's New Around Holland. We'll be joined in the 10:30 segment by State Representative Brad Slaw of Zeeland Township, his monthly visit. And we'll be open line following the 10 and 11 o'clock news blocks. But in our opening segment, we are joined by Mark Ludwig. He would like to be the next Allegan County Drain Commissioner. He joins us via the Zoom connection. Mark, good morning and welcome to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. Thrilled to be here.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question out there to ask Mark, no, you can't get on the Zoom connection, but you can certainly call us at 395-1450, 395-1450. Let's get all of our listeners, even though many in the Ottawa County area will not be making the decision for a drain commissioner, but let's get everybody up to speed exactly who exactly is Mark Ludwig. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gary, I've lived in Allegan County for 15 years now. I've been affiliated with our Soil Conservation District for 12 years, either as an employee or a board member. And I run a little farm down in Clyde Township, so try to keep my hand in agriculture. I guess longer term, I'm a Michigan State grad with a degree in environmental issues and a short course degree grad from the University of Wisconsin in grass-based dairy farming. And a longtime nature nerd, just really kind of into, the plants and the critters and all that good stuff. So that's me in a nutshell.
What compelled you to make the decision, I'd like to be the next drain commissioner of Allegan County?
The drain commissioner in the state of Michigan is a very powerful office with a very narrow focus. And the reason it was necessary to create the office of drain commissioner was because Michigan's basically, all of southern Michigan's basically a swamp at the time of European settlement, and we had to do a lot of drainage work in order to live the life we live in this area. Why do I want to be your drain commissioner now? Because I see climate change really kind of changing the rules, changing the numbers we have to deal with. We're going to have bigger storms. We're going to have harder rains. We're going to have it coming faster at us. And as I look at our current drain commissioner, I think she's looking more backwards than forwards. She's looking back on a long and productive career with the Drain Commission, but I've asked her straight up if she's getting ready for climate change, and her answer is no. So, I want to make sure that we are getting ready, we are getting prepared. We're making those drains a little wider. We're thinking about detention basins, and we're thinking about talking to our agricultural community and our municipalities about making sure less water is ending up in the drains through better practices. And finally, as I've gotten out campaigning, it's become very clear that there's a hierarchy of who gets served in Allegan County. Your large landowners, your big farmers, they're doing great under our current drain commissioner. She bends over backwards for some of those guys. But if you're on an orphan drain, if you're on a drain that needs a lot of maintenance, you're going to wait. And if you're not in a platted drain, there's really no help for you at all coming from the drain office, and that's something I'd like to change.
Is that part of the reason, maybe lack of resources at times, that the drain commissioner only has X amount of money to spend and has to make some tough decisions in that regard?
I think there is an aspect to that. The drain statute limits you to spending $5,000 a year per mile on different drains. And certainly one thing I would think about doing is heading down to Lansing and seeing if that could be updated to more reflect what needs to be done. I do think, however, that the drain office is understaffed at this point. There just are not enough people out there actually working in the field, clearing brush out of drains, making sure sediment isn't filling up different areas of the drains. So certainly I think a modest expansion of frontline staff is in order with the drain office. And one thing I've pledged to do is to go out in the field with the staff at least one day a week to see what do they need, what could we do to make that field staff more efficient. And certainly I'm all about making sure that people are working safely and have the tools they need to get their job done.
I'm talking with Mark Ludwig. He is the candidate for Allegan County Drain Commissioner. You have a question for Mark, especially those of you in Allegan County that'll have to make a decision by the November 3rd general election. You can answer the question at 395-1450, 395-1450. Yes, you mentioned staffing and resources, but sometimes, that decision has to be made not by you or your office. It has to be made by the county commissioners. And sometimes you're at the whim of not only the county commissioners, but in case, you mentioned about going to Lansing and changing some things as well to get some help as well. You can only do so much without getting the help from other people.
That's true. And certainly I've been involved with the conservation district, and one of the projects I got involved with was putting a 2-stage ditch on one of the tributaries of the Rabbit River. We've got some pretty serious flooding issues in that whole kind of Hopkins area, and a 2-stage ditch is just widening out the existing drain so that there's a little more capacity in there. That project was paid for by grant funding that the conservation district secured. So in addition to tapping the internal resources of the drain office and the taxing authority of the drain office, I would be looking to partnering with the conservation district, partnering with the road commission, and looking for direct grants that we could apply for to infuse some more money into the drain office. Do keep in mind, though, that one of the reasons the drain office is so powerful is they can assess people for work done. And so there is a tremendous potential to go out there and use those assessments to get the money we need to get it done. And you don't really have to necessarily wait for the county board or anybody else. It's a relatively straightforward thing to get some of those projects moving forward. The other thing is the drain office can bond projects over 6 years. So if there are major projects you need that are going to exceed that $5,000 limit, there are certainly ways to do that. Speaking of working with other aspects of county government, one of the things I've been hearing as I talk to people around the county is there's a lot of not me being played between the drain office and the road commission. And really in an ideal world, your drain commission and your road commission are working hand in hand all the time. The road commission controls the drains along their right of ways. However, of course, as soon as that drain takes a turn and heads out into the country, then the drain commissioner owns it. Well, if everybody's playing not me, pretty quickly that situation breaks down into something that's not getting the job done. I'll be happy to just say, well, sure, the drain office will handle this one, and be more aggressive about working with that road commission, so that when we've got to turn the tables and talk to them, they know that we're a strong partner and that we've done them some favors, and hopefully they reciprocate.
Mark, let me talk a little bit about the erosion situation that has been of a concern, especially along Lake Michigan, the high water levels. How much can a drain commissioner do in this particular situation? Is it something for a drain commissioner, or maybe it's something that goes to a different department than what a drain commissioner would do?
There's not a lot right now for the drain commissioner to do about coastal erosion. That's really not their department. However, let's pull back and think about erosion and land use more broadly. One of our big challenges in Allegan County and really across Michigan is that we still have an awful lot of soil erosion coming off some of our agricultural fields. I'm not talking about everybody, but there are certainly some farms that are still practicing what I would characterize as high-risk farming methods. There's two problems with that. First of all, of course, a lot of that sediment ends up in the drains, and it has to be removed, and somebody's got to pay for digging that out. The other problem is that kind of farming has less infiltration of water. In other words, that raindrop hits the ground, it's running off, it's heading for the drain. Where a lot of our no-till fields, where we've got good cover, good porosity developed over the years, is because we're leaving that soil profile alone. That more of that water is going to soak in, and much like the issue we have with energy, the cheapest energy to replace from fossil fuels is the energy we don't need, that we gain through efficiency. Similar thing with our drainage. If we're not getting as much water into the county drain, headed for the Kalamazoo, the Black, the Macatawa, and headed out to Lake Michigan, over time, perhaps we can have less of that water ending up in Lake Michigan. Now that's going to be relatively marginal, in the short term in just one county. But if we can kind of blaze a trail and encourage other drain commissioners around the state to, work more aggressively with the farm community in order to have less runoff, over time, we may be able to actually reduce some of that rise in Lake Michigan as well. But, we're getting to the point because of climate change where we're just getting more precipitation, and it's going to be dealing, honestly and forthrightly with this problem that's going to challenge us in so many sectors in our lives going forward through the century. One thing we could think about doing is putting something called a Seagate on the Mac, on the Black, on the Kalamazoo, so we can kind of close the door on those days when the wind's blowing very hard from the west and actually piling water up in something called a seiche on our shores. We can see an additional 14, 15 inches of water level piling up on those real super windy days. If we could close that gate, we could prevent a lot of trouble in places like Saugatuck. Right now, we actually have water in the street in places in Saugatuck. That's how high the water is. And something like these storm gates, which we see actually on the east side of the state, on the Saginaw Bay area counties. The Bay County Drain Commissioner controls about 45 of these gates because they get a 3-foot storm surge when they get a wind from the north. So they've had to deal with this for a long time. I think it's something we at least ought to be talking about with our constituents along the shoreline.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, or let me get this straight on this. A Seagate would be directly under your auspices for the Kalamazoo River because of the mouth being in Saugatuck. But with the Black River down in the South Haven area and the Macatawa River up in the Holland area, you might have to have some cooperation with neighboring counties, right?
Absolutely, and that's very typical. For example, our Tulip Intercounty Drain is controlled both by the Ottawa and the Allegan Drain Commissioners, so it's a pretty frequent situation where the drain commissioners work together. The other thing, certainly if we started getting more serious about taking care of our soil erosion problem, perhaps we could kind of finally fulfill the promise of Project Clarity. I look at Project Clarity where we have spent literally millions of dollars trying to clean up the Lake Macatawa and the Macatawa watershed, and we still have, can we say, some bad actors out there who are still producing a lot of soil erosion, still sending a lot of nutrients down the Macatawa River. And frankly, well, there's been some progress on Project Clarity. It just hasn't delivered the way we'd all hoped for. I was actually the initial agriculture technician for that when I was still with the Conservation District. If we were to start billing people for these big soil erosion events, I think we'd get people's attention, and we would really, hopefully, begin to encourage people to move in the right direction, and maybe finally get the promise of Project Clarity become the reality.
But yet, and with the Project Clarity situation, that's more of an Ottawa County thing, even though there's a little bit of it in Allegan County.
Not really true, Gary. If you look at where the bulk of the sediment's coming from and the bulk of the nutrients are coming from, it's Fillmore, Overijssel, and to a lesser extent Laketown Township, which is all Macatawa watershed. And those are very intensive ag areas. Many of them are highly loaded up with phosphorus from the historical animal farming up there. And I've seen some of the soil tests from those guys, and it's incredible how much phosphorus is in there. So I guess first of all soil erosion is not created equally. Some of it is so loaded up with nutrients, it has a bigger impact. And, frankly, we still have, we've got, and I'll give credit. Some of our farmers in that area have done a tremendous job. They've made huge strides, and some of them have not. And it's going to be leaning on some of those guys who have not, working with our conservation district that just passed a millage for almost $500,000 a year to put into conservation. I would say if we take that $500,000 at the conservation district, we add an activist drain commissioner on top of that, and we will make rapid progress on that problem.
Talk a little bit about that passage of that millage. That was a little bit of a question mark until some extra votes finally got put into the till because it wasn't on the ballot in Holland.
Yeah, it was kind of I guess fortunate how it worked out in the end, because we were able, those of us pushing that millage were able to really focus on South Holland, and by just a few hundred votes push that millage over the top. I guess the good news is we've got it for 6 years, so we've got a good long time to put this project in motion, and I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to do with those funds. I'll tell you, it's going to be a lot more fun being a board of directors member on the conservation district. I'll tell you that for nothing.
An interesting line you've used, Mark, before in terms of your candidacy. You want to be known as the Lorax of Allegan County. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Ludwig for Lorax. Everybody loves alliteration, right? The Lorax, of course, is the famous Dr. Seuss story. You've seen it on TV. You've read it to the kids and all of that. And as I put it, he's a runty, hairy pest who speaks for the trees, and that describes me pretty well. It's a little tongue in cheek, but in all seriousness, I'm a pretty good botanist. I'm a real good soils guy. I know my wildlife pretty well. I would love to stand up for not only the drainage resources, but just be kind of someone who's going to speak up for the natural world in general, and making sure that we're taking care of this lovely creation we have, and making sure that it's in good shape for future generations.
I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know whether or not you can answer it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I'll pose it anyway. The current situation we're in with COVID-19 and the outbreak, how does that impact perhaps the drain commissioner's office? Does it impact it at all? Does it positive, negative? What do you see as what we're in right now, the 8-month, and probably will still be in if you are elected when you take office after the election?
It certainly makes things more challenging for all of us. I mean, obviously you and we're a half a mile apart, and we're on Zoom, and that kind of public outreach and things that I would love to be able to do just to explain to people what the heck a drain commissioner is, that's all going to have to wait a little while. As far as maintaining drains, doing the planning, the kinds of things I want to do, that's largely going to be unaffected. Most of the work we do is done outside, where we're significantly safer, I guess, than if we got to sit around inside. But it's been a challenging year, that's for darn sure, and that challenge isn't going to end anytime soon.
I'll ask you another political type of question. Maybe it's not a drain commissioner type, but I recall a generation ago, a Shiawassee County drain commissioner dabbled in other Michigan politics, and maybe sort of diverted his intentions away from the initial thing. And I think the name was Robert Tesh off the top of my head. Trying to focus on the task at hand. It's easy to do if you're running as a brand new candidate, as you are doing right now.
Sure.
But how concerned should people be that let's focus on the job and not try to dabble in some other things away from the drain commissioner's role?
Well, I can pledge to the people of Allegan County that I won't be running for anything else if I get myself elected drain commissioner. I'll be focusing on that job like a laser. I will, however, be focusing, I guess we could say, holistically. It's important to make sure that the crew's big enough, that the drains are being maintained properly. And like I said, I'm going out once a week with the crew to make sure that that's happening efficiently. And the other thing the drain commissioner does is keep a ton of records, and I'm very interested in seeing how much of those records we can open up and put out there so the public can really have a look at them, because it is not real easy to see inside that office right now. Lastly, I'll just say, I'm a Democrat. I live in Allegan County, which is not a very Democratic county, and I've lived there for a long time now, and I've lived in rural Michigan for a long time. I think having a foot kind of in a lot of different worlds as I do is going to serve the drain office. You know, I know how to work with the Republican establishment of this county. I know a lot of those guys by name, guys and gals. And I've also, you know, because I've got these, you know, more liberal friends who are kind of on the outs politically in Allegan County and have been for decades, you know, I kind of feel like I can serve everybody. So it's not just going to be about serving the elite, and that's really what I see going on in that drain office right now. You know, the big landowners are doing great. I'd appreciate people looking at ludwigforallegan.net if you've got more questions. You can certainly find us on Facebook and TikTok and all that. You should at the very least look at our parade videos from this year. We did 3 of those, which were just tons of fun. Mm-hmm. And, you know, kind of give you an idea, you know, obviously Ludwig for Lorax, I'm a little bit of an entertaining guy, and we went all out to be entertaining on those parade videos.
Sounds good. Mark Ludwig, thank you very much for joining us on Talk of the Town.
Loved it, Gary. Thank you.